How's it going? And today I'm going to explore a game I have not touched in a very, very long time. It's been, 8 years since I've rolled dice and got to play in the old world. 8 years. My last game was preparing for our regular seasonal league/narrative campaign where we were going to invade Ulthuan. And my last games were play tests of the scenarios that were going to be used. Unfortunately, that never happened because a couple weeks after we were ready to launch the campaign for the summer, Age of Sigmar happened. And the rest, as they say, is history. Now, in that 8 years, Warhammer has laid on life support by the community and gone in different directions with Ninth Age and various community projects. And today, we are going to look at Warhammer Army Projects, and we're going to bring a 1,000-point battle report. And we're going to explore how the changes from that differ from 8th edition. We're going to explore a game in depth and how it worked. Maybe you've not seen Warhammer Fantasy before. And I'm just going to relive some memories that I've missed a tremendous amount. So some notes real quick about this battle report coming up. The format that I use for this is still action. I'm not a super fan of doing battle reports that are live or trying to film while we're playing, simply because those get to be very, very long and there's a lot of dead space and a lot of idle chit-chat. And I know some people like that. I don't like putting those together or editing those. That's not to say that I'll never do that. And if you followed the Conquest channel that I did, you know that I had a lot of live action battle reports. But this is this image one. And with still image, we're going to recap what happened. And the battle has been put up on Tabletop Simulator. My opponent was an AI opponent that I use for my own game development. And for those of you who don't know, I've been in games design. It'll be 30 years this summer. I have a machine learning component that I've used for a very long time to help with army rosters and army lists. It was birthed back in the 6th edition days. It's kind of what helped me build my lists back then to do well, I suppose, in the big tournament scenes. But I use it now, and I've mainly used it over the past decade or so to help balance out two different army rosters. And during COVID, one of the I got a chance to play with a lot of people from the UK, from England. And they blew my mind away because one of the first things they asked was, is my army list okay? Is this fun for you? Because over in the States, at least from my experience over here, that question is never asked. Over here, our goal is to build an army list to beat you before the game has started, in a lot of cases. So essentially that's what I did. I built a 1,000-point chaos list because chaos has always been my favorite army. And I had the machine learning component build a comparable empire list at 1,000 points with some conditions. Like we wanted to see some infantry. We want to make it look like a pretty fun battle and weigh what I did with an army that's comparable and is not just going to roll me over or get rolled over. So that's enough about that. We're going to explore that battle report. We're going to look at what happened, and we're going to show you 1,000 points of Warhammer Army Project. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. Battle report. Chaos Norse, which is basically chaos versus the Empire. This battle is going to take place on right after the Sea of Claws. So in the lore to the north, that's where the Norse dwell, near the northern polar area where a chaos vortex is. And the northern tip of the Empire down here is constantly raided. You can see Kislev off to the east. If you're a total Warhammer fan, you're very familiar with this realm. But this is a raiding party that has landed right about in this area, and they are going to attempt to raid a village that is led by a warrior priest. Now some things. As we're going to be talking about Warhammer 8th quite a bit, and Warhammer Army Projects. Some places where I feel, in my opinion, that 8th went off the rails. Steadfast was put in the game to bring back infantry, because in 7th edition, the game had evolved into a lot of small cavalry units for a lot of people, and the design studio noticed that, and they wanted to bring back some infantry regiments. So they did that with Steadfast. The problem is, as I've discussed in other videos, there were no counters to this. So people built, in many cases, these large mega bricks. And this was coupled with the community pushing 2,500 points. So you had these very large model count armies, and that put off a lot of new people because very few people wanted to have to buy all those models and paint them just to be able to play. And that's understandable. The counter I had put in to deal with this in the narrative events that I ran back then was just simply disruption. That is, if you're flanked or rear charged, you lose your rank bonus and you also lose Steadfast. And that one rules change by itself put an end to the mega blobs. My second issue that I had were the 6 dice for the win kill spells. And it was called 6 dice for the win because your casters could throw a max of 6 dice at any spell. And what your goal was when you threw 6 dice was you needed at least 2 of those dice to be a double 6. Or, sorry, excuse me, 2 of those dice to be a 6. You needed 2 6s. Because 2 6s back then meant irresistible force, which meant your opponent could not counter it. He could not dispel it. It was going off. So you would take your nasty evil spell that would say every model in the unit does this test or dies, and you would throw 6 dice at it, hoping for a double 6. This type of game design is low risk, high reward. It's very common in modern game design, and this led that tactic to be very, very common. Which meant, again, it was a very one-dimensional approach to the game. Just throw 6 dice at it and hope for the kill spell. And there was, there was a risk. So I said low risk, not no risk. But that risk was like 13%. So if you did irresistible force, you had to roll on a miscast table too. And so long as on 2 dice you rolled higher than a 4, you were fine. You would have some minor effect go off, something that no one cared about. If you rolled a 4 or less, which was a 13% chance, your wizard was destroyed. So you had a 13% chance to kill yourself, and the rewards were usually exponentially higher. You would like lay out half or more of an enemy unit, a big brick. So yeah, of course people are going to do that. My counter to that was I said double 1s are miscasts, and they take precedence over double 6. So if you roll double 6 and double 1, it's just a flat miscast. And by itself, that helped start curbing some of the 6 dice for the win mentality. Now, Warhammer Army Project has their own version of these two very things, and almost identical, not exactly identical, but very similar to how I did it, so we were on the same thought process. In Warhammer Army Project, disruption does cancel Steadfast, so long as your unit strength is 10 or higher. Casting spells in Warhammer Army Projects is a lot more risky. You miscast on a double 1. There are no irresistible forces. So if you roll double 6, your opponent can still try to dispel you. In Warhammer Army Project, every 6 you roll lets you roll another dice. But that dice itself cannot explode out. So if you roll double 6s, that just means you get to roll 2 extra dice and add that. But your opponent can still try to dispel you. If you roll double 1s, you roll on a chart, you roll a d6, and then you add the number of dice you rolled. And the higher you roll in that chart, the nastier it gets. So the more dice you want to throw at a spell, the higher the risk you're going to take that something bad may happen. So just, it puts that element of moderate risk to the reward. And I really, really like that. The last thing that annoyed me about 8th edition were the Death Star builds. At least in my area, a lot of people just like to shove all 4 of their characters into one unit, usually their mega unit. And it just, again, led to very one-dimensional games where if you killed the Death Star unit, you won. I'm not saying that that's hard or I'm complaining because it was difficult to beat. It was just very one-dimensional and very boring. In my campaigns, you were allowed to put 1 character in a unit, and that was it. Warhammer Army Projects does not do anything in that regards, and I'm fine with that. But the other 2 pointers are covered pretty well through their rule set. So I was pretty happy to see that. All right, let's look at the armies. 1,000-point armies. This army is, the theme is Marauders. So we're a raiding Norse army from the north. There's not going to be a whole lot of weird special chaos things. It's just going to be based around Marauders. So they're led by Toki Wartooth. If you are a Death Clock fan, you know who that is. He's very cheap. He's 59 points. We slapped medium armor on him, which gives him a 5+ armor save, and then a shield, which gives him a 4+ armor save, and a 6-up ward save because he has a hand weapon. And he has Eye of the Gods, which just means he's forced to declare challenges, and if he kills an enemy character in a challenge, he gets a cool random ability. Well, it may not be cool. Sometimes he gets turned into a spawn, but chaos is chaos, right? 59 points, no magic items. He is accompanied by Deagle. Deagle is the Chaos Sorcerer of Metal, level 2, and he has a Power Familiar. The rest of the army, we have 20 Marauders. These just have hand weapon, armor, and shield. So they'll have a 5-up armor save, full command, which means they have a leader, a musician, and a standard bearer, and they clock in at 150 points. And then we have another unit of 20 Marauders. These have shields, light armor, and flails. So they can't use their shields in combat, but while they're being shot at, they'll be able to have shields. It's probably a waste of points because gunpowder tends to negate 2 points of armor. So these guys have a 5-up armor save, but when they're being shot by handguns, they'll have no armor save. We have 5 horsemen. This is the fast cav unit. They are going to come with spears, light armor, and shields. And we're going to have 5 warhounds, which have poison attacks. Over here, we have our 2 hammer units. We have my Chaos Ogres, 5 of them. They have great weapons, medium armor, and a leader. So they're on a 5-up armor save. Their great weapons are going to give them strength 6 on their first turn of combat, and they're going to go down to strength 5. For you AOS fans, that just basically means they're going to be wounding a lot easier, and the armor penetration, the armor penetration is based off of strength. So at strength 4, you lose a point of armor. At strength 5, you lose 2 points of armor, and so on and so forth. Underneath that, we have a chariot, a Gore-Beast chariot at 130 points. So that clocks in at 994 points. And their opponents. This was generated by a machine learning algorithm that has deemed this to be fairly comparable to what I showed you. I named them. The leader is a warrior priest, Luther Hellwig. 99 points. He comes with a hand weapon, heavy armor, which puts him at a 4-up save, a shield, which will put him at a 3-up save, and he's wielding the Obsidian Hammer, which is a magic item that ignores armor altogether. He is accompanied by Isabrand Hellbraun, 100-point Bright Wizard level 2, so he's a flame wizard, and their army standard bearer, Joseph Toast, 91 points. He is wearing plate armor and shields. That gives him a 2-up armor save, because in Warhammer Army Projects, you have basically 4 levels of armor. It's a little bit different than Warhammer Fantasy, where you only had 3 levels of armor. In Warhammer Army Projects, plate armor gives a 3-up armor save, and the shield gives them a boost of 1. The Griffin Standard is a magical banner that will double the rank bonus of the unit. Their units, we have 20 halberds with full command, wearing medium armor, 5-up armor save, 170 points. 20 spearmen, full command, wearing with light armors and shields. They have a 5-up armor save, 150 points. We have 3 units of handguns, and the Hellblaster volley gun, which is a little bit different in Warhammer Army Projects in that you roll the artillery dice 3 times. Whatever the range is that you're hitting at that range, so there's no half hits like in previous versions. And of course, misfires can blow it up. But it's a strength 5 machine that's -3 to your armor save. So it's a Gatling gun. This clocks in at an even 1,000 points. All right, so laying out that army side by side, we have the tail of the tape. This gives you a look at the different roles that these units are going to be sitting in and what we're expecting. Obviously, the Empire Army here, they're going for a range type attack, so they're going to want to sit back. And they're going to whittle away the Chaos Army, which is pretty much an all-combat army, which was typical for Chaos armies. Warhammer Army Projects does give Chaos some missile weapons, so they have some hunters and whatnot. But I chose to use a traditional-styled Chaos army. The mission. I just wanted to keep it simple, so we're doing a battle line. Battle line was the most common type of mission that we saw back in Warhammer. It's essentially line up and kill each other and then score the game at the end. Random scenarios are important for helping with army composition. A big problem of past games was simply that a lot of the community would force the same type of scenario so that they knew what to build. Battle line was just one of those common scenarios, and we're going to use it here just because it's easy. It's an easy score. So how you score in battle line: if you destroy a unit, you get its points for your score. If you take a unit down to 50% of its wounds, you get half its points. If at the end of the game, now these are from Warhammer Army Project, because in Warhammer Fantasy, if a unit was fleeing at all at the end of the game, even if it hadn't lost any models, you got full points. They modified that. At the end of the game, if a unit is fleeing, but it's still greater than half its original size, you only get half its points. Otherwise, you're getting full points. Bonus points. If you kill the general, 100 points. If you capture an army standard, 100 points. For every unit standard you capture, 25 points. This game goes for 6 turns. Looking at the spells. Warhammer Army Project, you are allowed to pick your spells. However, they cap what spells you can cast depending on your level. That is your level +2, which means a level 2 wizard can only select up to the number 4 spell in the book. So you don't have level 2s running around with the Doom kill spells. Those only get cast by level 4s, which is good. That kind of helps us scale because we don't have to worry about in a 1,000-point game a chucklehead throwing Pit of Shades or whatever and ending the game in turn 2. That just doesn't happen. So here you get your signature spell, Fireball. Fireball can be pumped up, as you can see, 3 different levels. Gives it a longer range and does a lot more hits. Strength 4 hits will be a -1 to the armor save. Piercing bolts of burning is like a bolt thrower. It's going to do D3 hits, D3 strength 4 hits for every rank of the target unit. So the bigger the unit is, the more damage it can do. And Flaming Sword of Ruin. This is a boost spell. Gives a target unit +1 to wound until the start of the next magic phase. It also gives them flaming and magical attacks, should that matter. In this case, it doesn't matter, but like if you had a flammable unit or demons that could only be hurt by magic, this would affect them pretty well. But it's the +1 to wound that is the key here. The metal spells chosen. Well, one of the attributes of chaos of metal in general is that the casting value of all metal spells will be lowered by 1 if the target unit does an armor value of 4 to 6+, and lowers by 2 if the armor is a 1 to a 3+. So if you're targeting something with a lot of armor, it's easier to go off, which is neat. Fire also had an attribute. It essentially does more damage if it's already been on fire once that turn. So the more you slam a unit with fire spells, the more damage it does. Signature spell is Searing Doom. This is a D6 hits, ignores your armor save. The wound roll equals the unmodified armor save of the target. So the more armor you're wearing, the easier it is to wound you. Unfortunately, Empire doesn't have a lot of armor sitting out here, so this looks like it's not going to be very useful as much, but we'll see. The 2 spells chosen, Gehenna's Golden Hounds. This targets any enemy model, even in a unit. Does D6 strength 5 hits. Does not allow lookout sir rolls. This is basically a sniper spell meant to take out characters, which he will be doing. And he chose Glittering Robe. This is a boost spell. Target unit will gain +2 armor. So those are the magic spells in effect. Now then, we have deployment. And let's take a look at how these armies are set up. The first thing to note is the terrain. I'm a big fan of random terrain. I do not like to know what my boards are going to look like. Competitive players, I noted, they had tournament boards that they like to use. You usually can know pretty much what to expect on them. And as such, you can build armies list. You can build your army knowing what you're going to see on the table. For Tabletop Simulator, I have a number of tables, and I randomly generated one. So terrain is the third player. I like games where terrain is the third player and where terrain actually plays a role. Because, to me, wargaming is about not only being able to control my side, but to be able to mitigate the battlefield and to be able to handle the battlefield and whatever it throws at me. It's personal preference, but you're going to see a lot of my tables are going to be more realistic looking, and terrain will actually matter, as opposed to like cramming rivers off into the corner and just having this big open center field where everyone slams into it. I just find the games more engaging. What you'll note here, there is a river rolling through the middle. That river you can't march through it, but there's these bridges right here that allow you to march over them. That is particularly important for the chariot and for the horsemen and for the hounds, because this is dangerous terrain to them crossing it. Dangerous terrain means they roll a d6 for every model, and on a 1, they take a wound with no armor save allowed. Chariots take d6 wounds, so crossing this is very dangerous. We have some obstacles. We have some fence lines here. In Warhammer Army Projects, fence lines and obstacles do not impede your movement. And in past versions of Warhammer, those would impede your movement. In this, they essentially give cover save if you're behind them, and that's it. We have a couple structures that you can't just walk through. These rocky, icy boulders are dangerous ground, and then we have some trees which count as light forests. The Empire won the roll-off to see which side of the table they'd be on, and they chose this. So the Chaos side is going to have to walk across this river. And the Empire, as you can see, is just basically set up to greet them with open arms and guns. Laying out the units one by one, you can see the left side over here of the Chaos side. This Ogre unit is a hammer unit, and he is going to be coming up this flank and trying to put pressure right over here on this artillery battery and gunners. You've got the two main combat units that are going to be able to push their way forward. You have a chariot providing support, and then you have the fast elements, which likely are going to try to wing around over here and come at the army from the side. From the Empire standpoint, they're just going to sit back and they're going to shoot. So this is a fairly common type of gunline build. You see this a lot with like dwarves as well. Only the dwarves would push their infantry in front, and the guns would be, if they had hills, would be on there, and you'd have to get through those nasty bricks of dwarves. In this case, the meat's going to be sitting with the halberds and the halberds here and the spearmen here. So Toki is sitting here in this unit of marauders, and the metal sorcerer is sitting over here with the flails. I will point out this and these two pieces jutting out. Tabletop Simulator is a pain in the butt to split up models, so this just denotes that these two characters are in that unit. They're actually in the front rank. Over here, same thing. The Battle Standard Bearer is in the front rank of the spearmen, and the Warrior Priest is in the front rank of the halberds, and the Wizard sitting over here by himself behind the gunners and the Hillblaster. So that is deployment. With that, we roll off to see who goes first, and Chaos wins the roll. And their strategy is going to be pretty simple. You need to get up the table as fast as you can and hopefully mitigate the damage coming after you. So some pointers here. All the units move forward. The Metal Sorcerer is going to start the game off trying to already hurt the Warrior Priest. He is going to score a hit. So the Warrior Priest will take 1 wound right off the bat and actually score Chaos half points, which the scoreboard here does not reflect. For this, about a 50. That's a 50-point shot right there, getting half of his points. Glittering Robe is dispelled, and Searing Doom goes off, and so the Chaos Sorcerer is able to kill 1 halberdier. So that's it. That's turn 1. Push up. Metal Sorcerer damages the Warrior Priest and a halberd. If they can find a way to take this priest out right away, that's going to be huge, because that's going to get rid of the Leadership 8 bubble, and it's going to score an additional 100 points. Now, bottom of turn 1. The bottom of turn 1 is quite painful. The Empire doesn't really do a lot of movement. The Wizard is going to move over into the tree so that he can see Toki's unit here, the command unit. And you can see here all of the gunner units opening fire. So the Flame Wizard goes ahead and gets things going on the Marauders. Because they have so many ranks, piercing bolts, he's hoping is going to do some damage. Unfortunately, he does get the 4 dice for the 4 ranks, but we roll 4 ones. So only 4 actual hits happen, and it only ends up doing 1 wound. So that was a disappointing magic phase for the Empire. And then the artillery happens. The Hellblaster rolls up 22 shots, and needing 5s to hit, hits 11, so hits 50%, and shreds 10 of those Marauders. 2 whole ranks just evaporate into blood and mist. The central unit of gunners here contributes even more, 2 more casualties. And at this point, once you take 25% casualties in a unit, you have to make a panic check. They're going to be testing on an 8 because that's what Toki is. He's leadership 8. And he rolls a 5. So the Marauders are good, but that unit is basically no longer combat effective. And that's the point of what just happened. Take a unit, hit the unit, make it not combat effective anymore, move on to your next target until you have a bunch of shredded units that can't really do anything, and then you let your mainline units mop up the rest. So that's the tactics going here. The gunners on the left target the ogres, but aren't able to do any damage. The gunners on the right target the chariot, because the chariot's an intermediate threat, and they manage to knock 2 wounds onto it out of 5. So in this case, you can see our score jumps 75 to 50 right away for the half cost, or the Marauders going down 50%. That was a very productive shooting phase for the Empire. Now, I want you to hang out. I want you to watch, because Warhammer has a lot of these moments where things just seem to be like you know exactly what's going to happen and the game is already over, and things swing quite a bit. It's one of the reasons why I love the game so much. Let's see what happens. We go to turn 2. So the hits keep coming for Chaos in turn 2. So what's left of the Marauder unit, you can see swings up, and they're going to try to basically become a support unit. The River becomes the 3rd player, as we expected, and it starts to slow down, or it's going to slow down the units, and we know they can't march over this, so this is going to slow them a bit. But no dangerous terrain checks are failed, so that's good. So no one dies from crossing the river. There were no 1s rolled. In the magic phase, we roll a 2 and a 1, so there's a whole 3 dice here. And with the Power Familiar, we have 4 dice to 2 dispel. So we try to go out with Gehenna again. We try to hit that Warrior Priest right here, and we roll double 1s. We get our first miscast of the day. Because we roll 4 dice on this, we roll a d6 and add 4 to it. Well, we rolled a 3, rolled a 2, add 4 to that, it's a 6, and then in Warhammer Army Project, that's Detonation. So Detonation means the Wizard, and everything around it takes a Strength 10 hit. The Wizard doesn't take any damage. He rolls a 1 to wound himself, but the Chieftain, 4 Marauders get wounded. The Chieftain's actually not wounded. That's a misspelling. Or it's not a misspelling. Excuse me, a mistext. This is wrong. So Chieftain did not get wounded. That was 4 Marauders that got wounded. So Chaos just basically stomps on their own feet there. They have no shooting, so they can't really do anything else. They do no damage. They're just hurting themselves. We kill 4 Marauders. 4 Marauders. Yeah. Let's see what the Empire does to capitalize on that. Well, the Empire blows themselves up as well. So there's no movement here at all. The magic phase comes out. The priest goes ahead and casts a 5+ ward save on his unit. So there should be a little marker here that just denotes that. These guys are now gifted with a 5+ ward save. And that means if you fail an armor save, you then get to roll a ward save. A little bit different than 40k if you're a 40k player, where you either get your armor or you're invulnerable. Fantasy, you get both. The Fire Wizard, not to let the Metal Wizard outdo himself, the Fire Wizard also miscasts and detonates. Now he's by himself, so he only detonates himself, so he takes a wound. In the shooting phase, the Hellblaster goes ahead and tries to start chewing on these ogres, and it rolls a 1. It rolls a misfire right out of the gate on the first barrel and a 1, so the Hellblaster blows itself up and hands 100 points to the Empire in doing that. Had an amazing first turn, blows itself up in turn 2. That's how the dice beat. These, the leftmost gunners, open fire on the ogres, and they manage to kill a stand. They do 3 wounds, and each ogre has 3 wounds, so that'll take 1 out. That's not enough for a panic check yet. The middle gunners, they're going to go ahead and combine fire with the right gunners. They're going to focus on this chariot. They're only able to do 1 wound more, but this also nets them half points, and this chariot's down to 2 wounds. So looking at, this is a third of the game done. Chaos is taking a lot of damage, but that Hellblaster blowing itself up and the wizard damaging himself, also giving him half points. That's fairly significant. Let's see how, again, that kind of takes the pendulum and swings a little bit back. It makes it a little bit more even. Because without that Hellblaster there, this changes this whole left flank. Turn 3 for Chaos. Well, not surprisingly, Chaos is going to just push forward. What they're trying to do, we're trying to get our ogres in a position where we can actually do something. The Marauders clear this area. The weakened Marauders move up into a position where they're basically going to try to charge one of these detachments to just clear them out of the way. Toki also jumps out and gets into this unit right here. So there's now 2 characters sitting in that unit. The chariot moves up. The hounds are going to go ahead and move up. And it looks like one of the hounds, so this icy boulder was dangerous terrain, and they rolled a 1, so one of the hounds kills itself slipping over the boulders. The horsemen swing far out to the right, so we're trying to create this type of shape here where we're going to put pressure on multiple fronts. Now, hounds aren't very dangerous or scary. They're only, like, again, 35 points out of 1,000, and there's a reason for that. They die real quick, and they don't really do a lot. Their primary use is as a screen or just to get in and maybe throw in a wound or 2. These guys have poison, so in Warhammer Army Projects, poison means +1 to wound. In older editions of Warhammer, poison meant natural 6 meant an automatic wound if you rolled to hit a 6, so you didn't have to roll the wound. So they didn't like that, so they replaced that with a +1 to wound. But so yeah, looking up here, you can see we've got the hammer coming in from this side. We've got a lighter support hammer coming in to try to knock out that unit. And then you still have a fairly strong center that wants to push forward. This is still fairly dangerous. In the magic phase, the wizard is able to boost the chariot. He's taken 3 wounds. He's only got 2 left. So now he's going to cast a boon to the chariot. That's going to bring him up to a 1-up armor save until the beginning of the next Chaos magic phase. Searing Doom goes off on the halberds as well, so the wizard's able to get 2 spells off, but that only managed to kill another halberd. So slowly chipping away at that, and Golden Hounds is again cast on the warrior priest, trying to drop him, but that is where all the dispel dice are held, and that is dispelled. So it's an okay turn for Chaos. They do manage to net some field. But we still have, again, at this point, we're approaching halftime, and nothing is decided or even close to being decided at this point. So Empire goes. And the wizard goes ahead and moves. He marches full distance over here to the side. And the reason he does that, well, the ogres can't see him now. So he's essentially safe. There's nothing on the table right now that can target him, and he is able to roam freely. He's also got 1 wound on him, so he wants to be careful and not give up his points and also be able to contribute to the game. We see that Empire here, they're going to take these 2 elements and they're going to slide back a couple inches by just doing a back move. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to save some time. They want these, they don't want to give up a flank. So by moving forward, you can see that, and when we did the line, that's a crappy looking line, but in Warhammer, you have these arcs. And these tell you if you're in a flank or not. And if the majority of a unit is in a flank, that's a flank charge. Well, the majority of these horsemen, which are these 3, are in the front. So that's going to be a front charge as opposed to a flank charge. Additionally, it lets these gunners still be able to stand and shoot to the front on whoever wants to charge it. As opposed to like turning wholesale to the side and giving up a flank to these dogs or even to the chariot here. So another thing to note, this is a big one. In Warhammer 8th edition, actually in a lot of, I think previous editions too, these little units here, these gunner units, were called detachments. And detachments were common sight. And what you would see with detachments is they would support a main unit like this, the halberd unit or the spearman unit. And so if you charged the parent unit, the detachments could freely stand and shoot or countercharge your flank. And that's great. Being detachments meant if you destroyed them, no one cared. So you could sprinkle the field with these little 10-man units, and as the enemy destroyed them, no one cared. No one had to make panic checks. This was another one of several slides towards leadership not mattering as much. And that was a thing from 6th to 7th to 8th. And if you play 40K, you know leadership often is very minimally used. In Warhammer Army Projects, detachment rule doesn't work that way. It's essentially state troops, which is everything you see on this table right here for the Empire are state troops. If any state troop is within 3 inches of another state troop that's being charged, it may react as well. So if I charge this halberd unit and this gunner unit is near it, it can stand and shoot. However, if you have a unit strength of 10 or more and you're destroyed or you're run down in combat, you still invoke panic checks. And that is a big, big change in Warhammer Army Projects versus 8th edition, because these little detachments are no longer free. If I destroy them, I can cause a panic chain reaction to happen. It may not be common. You've got a battle standard bearer there, but the leadership in the Empire Army is an 8, so that's not a horrible chance for Chaos to try to run someone off. So keep that in mind. That is a big difference between 8th edition Empire and Warhammer Army Projects Empire. Now, Magic, the Empire Wizard's not able to get a lot of dice. Again, he's only got 6 dice to work with. So, in Warhammer, if you're not familiar with Warhammer, you roll 2d6, and that number is how many power dice you get. And then you can channel, which is for every level you get, you roll a d6. And if you roll 5 up, you can add those to your pool. So in this case, they're only getting 6 dice, and there's 3 dispel dice. And the only thing that goes off here, it looks like, is the War Priest's 5 up ward save goes off again. So they're trying to protect that command unit. They're trying to give the Warrior Priest his armor save and a 5 up ward save, and it's working pretty well. Warrior Priests, they have bound spells, which means all of their prayers go off on a 3 up, so you only need to chuck 1 dice at them typically. And they're enough to also try to chip away at your opponent's dispel dice pool. Because if they let them go off, they're annoying. They're not super powerful, but they're annoying. Flaming Sword goes on the gunners, that one fails, and Fireball to the ogres fails. So there's actually no dispel dice that were used this turn because the wizard just didn't roll high enough to cast anything, and Chaos let the Warrior Priest get the 3 up off because he only had 3 dispel dice, so you had to be careful with what he was going to try to throw dispelling at. Over here in the shooting phase, these 10 gunners are going to nick 2 wounds on the ogres. Also, they've almost got another one killed. And then we have the center gun unit's going to target the chariot. This time they're going to do a wound, but that 1 up armor save is going to help because the -2 from the handgunners goes up to a 3 up save, and he's able to make that save. This unit of handgunners cannot shoot, this upper right unit, because they moved, and handguns are move or shoot. So that is the disadvantage of taking gunners. They are the most common missile troop that I've seen in Empire armies. There are also archers and crossbows, which do have the ability. I think archers definitely have the ability to move and shoot. They're only strength 3. Crossbows, I can't remember if they're move or shoot because honestly, people never use them. They did have a longer range, but like when you're playing against Chaos, that longer range only matters on turn 1, so they just stick with the handgun, which is strength 4 and a -2 to your armor save. So anyhow, that's the end of turn 3, and we can see this score, 150 to 140-ish. It's a close game. I don't know if that score was 100% accurate. I think there's some half points missing there, but it's a very close game at the half. And this is where things start to get upended. Turn 4, Chaos kicks off the second half with a bunch of charges. And here's where the strength of the Empire Army starts to really come into play. So these ogres charge the handgunners here, and the handgunners are happy to oblige with a stand and shoot reaction. And they have 10 dice, and they need 5s to hit, and they end up hitting 7 of those 10. So great roll. And then they proceed to roll 6 of those 7 wounds, needing a 4 up. So super, super high set of rolls that were not statistically probable. But hey, it's a dice game, and that happens. The ogres take 6 wounds and have to take a panic check, and they fail. And they immediately turn around and flee, as you can see here. So that just caved in Chaos's left flank. and essentially removes those ogres from play. The center handgunners here, they're charged by what was left of the Marauder unit. And they managed out of 10 to hit 5 and do 3 wounds. And that's enough to cause a panic check. And those Marauders flee. So as you can see, they're at the bottom of the screen here. They turn around and flee. There's only 4 of them left. So they're pretty much out of the game and they're not doing anything. But Empire sits back, stand and shoot, boom. They're happy for you to charge. The Hounds over here, they want to charge this unit on the right. We're trying to set up a good... We're trying to weaken these gunners down. Unfortunately, so 4 of the 10 gunners hit, and they all wound. Hounds don't have an armor save, so they're all just destroyed. So 3 sets of charges happened in this turn. All 3 were repelled by stand and shoot. The Marauder Horsemen chose not to charge because they didn't want a frontal charge, so they move into a flanking position. And them being so close right here also means that when they do decide to charge, these gunners are not going to get to stand and shoot because they're too close. If you are within the... If a unit charges and the distance between them and their target is less than their movement characteristic, a stand and shoot may not be done. Let's see. Sorcerer casts Robes on the Chariot, but that's dispelled, so the Chariot's back to a normal 3-up armor save. And then the Sorcerer tries to cast Gehenna again. He's trying to... I think he's trying to target... Yeah, he's trying to target the Battle Standard Bearer here because he can't see the Warrior Priest. And he miscasts with a detonation and explodes. In this case, he actually does wound the Chieftain. So the Chieftain takes his first wound of the game. And 3 other Marauders with flails are taken out as well. So Magic's very fickle in this game. It had some good spots, but you can see it's very risky, and it may be worth taking some anti-explosion magic items like the Earthing Rod or whatever. I'll have to look that up for next time. So moving into turn 4 with the Empire. All right. So it's easy to get cocky at this point. You definitely don't want to get cocky. So the movement phase, basically all of these units begin rotating. So we want to face these threats. We want to, in this case, the Halberdiers are turning to face, so that what they're trying to do is present it so like they know these horsemen are coming in. They're going to be slamming in. Likely are going to kill these guys, and that's going to take them into the halberds. They don't want it to be a flank charge, so they want to position themselves where that overrun is going to be a frontal charge. And this chariot also, they don't want to turn their flank and let this chariot come busting their flank. So they're trying to maneuver themselves to accept the frontal charge from both. The Flame Wizard, he runs over to the flank. So he remember he's got that bolt thrower spell, right? Oh, he sees that and he's excited. He's like, ooh, wham, we can get that through there. But magic is basically shut down. So the only thing that goes off is the center unit gets the Flaming Sword cast on it, which is going to basically give flaming bullets +1 to wound. The gunners are going to use that to target the chariot, but they're not able to do anything. The chariot saves both. However, as turn 4 is ending, you can see Empire right now, they're enjoying a sizable lead, 433 to 150. So we've got a third of the game left to play. Chaos is positioning themselves to be able to charge. Let's see if melee combat is going to do enough to bring them some glory. Turn 5 was one of those, you look at this, you see how the score just amplified itself hugely, right? Again, that's why I love this game. You can't give up at any point. So the horsemen do charge the gunners, and they end up doing enough wounds to basically break them, and they do hit the front of the halberdiers. They overrun and hit the halberdiers. They caught the gunners. So the gunners are destroyed. That's what this break is right here. That unit's destroyed. Full points goes to Chaos. Now, the flail unit hit that center unit of gunners, did the same thing. They basically smashed into them. I'm not going to read all these off, but the side I kind of leave some important bonuses to see, so you can see how the combat worked. They do enough damage, basically. The gunners aren't going to be able to do anything. They break and flee. All right, so when you measure the distance from these break and flees right here, this was within 12 inches. This unit started with a unit strength of 10. So because they were destroyed, and they're within 12 inches of, that's an L. That's a very, okay, that's a 12. Use your imagination. They had to make a panic check. And these guys are on an 8 with a reroll. First roll was a 9, fails. Second roll was an 11, fails. See how close they are to the edge of this table? Yeah, that's like 4 inches or something. Anyhow, they ran off the table. Just like that. Just like that. That Army Standard and that unit of spearmen, that full unit of spearmen, gone. Gone because of panic. That's Warhammer Fantasy. Mitigating that, managing that is super important. That's why it's, again, a lot different than some other games you might be used to. A lot different than Age of Sigmar. A lot different than 40K. You can lose whole units to panic, and that's a war game. That's part of war, managing the morale of your troops. So you could see Chaos by all that happening, 551 to 433 at this point. Chaos takes the lead, and now we have a very interesting game. We have a wizard sitting over here. We have one unit of gunners, and we just have this unit of halberds facing off against these elements here. The ogres, I believe, the ogres rallied on turn 5, but they're out of the game. They're too far to do anything. Rallying does prevent people from grabbing all of their points. So they're only going to be worth 50% to the score, but they took the hammer out. Now let's see how Empire responds to that. Well, Empire responds to that by jumping from the frying pan into the fire. So the wizard moves to try to nail the chariot. So he's looking at these points. He's got 3 wounds here. 2 more wounds, you get full points for this chariot. They're down in some points. We need some. He goes in and throws a fireball and blows himself up. So he gives Chaos more points by miscasting and exploding himself. I want to say a 9. Yeah, they rolled a 9 for miscast. So he rolled 4 dice and rolled a 5. So that's a 9. And this detonation would have laid a template down, but there's nothing else that could get hurt. So this could hurt. This could wipe out a whole unit when that explosion happened. Luckily, just the wizard dies. Now, combat. Halberdiers, excuse me, let's get into shooting first. One big difference in Warhammer Army Project is you are allowed to fire into combat if you have an unobstructed line of sight to an unengaged flank. That's very different from most Warhammer editions where you can't fire into melee at all. I know like Conquest lets you fire into melee. Age of Sigmar lets you fire into melee. I think that's just we're going to call that a modern game element. Let you fire into melee. These gunners fire into melee and kill 4. So they remove a rank bonus out of here. That's huge. That is huge because the halberdiers, they're enjoying a 3 rank bonus right now. Now there's no ranks from Chaos. So that's going to make it even harder for Chaos to win these combats. All right, so that just by being allowed to happen was a massive thing. Okay, so combat goes by initiative. Toki, the chieftain, has to challenge because of this Chaos rule. The warrior priest accepts. These guys are both down to 1 wound. Toki goes first, 3 attacks. He does manage to land 2 wounds, and the priest fails 1. So the warrior priest dies. Toki gets to roll in the Eye of the Gods table, which is a 2d6 table, and he ends up getting +1 extra weapon skill. Not very exciting for this game, but if you're playing a campaign and that bleeds over, he's surrounded by the dark powers, and he's weapon skill 7. So he's a really badass Marauder chieftain. The Marauders on the horse will kill 3 more. So all in all, looks like we're looking at 4 dead from this unit. Halberdiers are strength 4. They managed to drop 2 of the 4 Marauders on the horse. And I think that's about it. Yeah, that's it. But just looking at that, so the Marauders score 6 points. They score 4 wounds. They charge, gave them a point, and they had a banner, gives them a point of 6. The Halberds have a banner, outnumber, have 2 ranks, and also did 3 wounds. So they won by a point. They won 7-6. And the Marauders, needing a 7, hold on a 6. But now things are looking kind of grim. I know Chaos is winning right now, but that's not really a lot going on. I would have liked to see maybe the horses flee, maybe get the chariot to be able to charge. But as it is, it's looking pretty grim for Chaos at this moment. In turn 6, we just condense into one turn. Essentially what happens is the ogres, again, as we said, they're out of charmed range and can't do anything. The other marauders kept fleeing, so we remove them off the table. Toki kills two halberdiers, and then the rest go simultaneously. Toki ends up getting killed to a halberd. A bunch of other halberds die. Another horseman dies. When it's all said and done, the marauders, you see, looks like the halberdiers win 7-4. Both the marauders and the horsemen end up fleeing. The halberdiers aren't able to catch them. They don't roll high enough. And then in their turn, they try to charge, because when you charge into a fleeing enemy in Warhammer Army Projects, it'll just automatically do a bunch of damage, depending on the unit strength. I think it's a wound for every 2 of your unit strength. So we have 2, 4, 5. We have 12 guys here. It would do 6 wounds. So that would totally wipe this unit out. It doesn't matter in the end, because this is below half strength. This is below half strength. So you're going to get full points anyway. That was more for the lulz. When you do break an enemy unit in combat like that, though, you do grab their banner. So the Empire does have the trophy. They have a Marauder banner. And the game does end at that point, 952 to 850. So if we break down the scoring, you can see here, this is where Chaos gets all their points from. And when we break down the Empire scoring, this is where they get all their points from. We only get half points for the Chariot and the Ogres, but they get full points for everything else. And overall, we have a 952 to 850 point close victory to the Empire. I think when we look at that battle, the 2 army lists I think were fun to play against. Terrain should matter in this game, and in this game it did matter. That one will generate a lot of comments. If you post into any group and talk about terrain, you're going to get a lot of comments. You're going to get people talking about terrain should matter. You're going to get people saying they don't like to be screwed over by terrain. And you can get some heated commentary on terrain and wargaming. So, again, my personal preference is random tables with random terrain, so that you can't army build for it. I don't like people being able to army build for known scenarios all the time, because that to me is how army lists get stale, when you know what to expect and can always build for it. But that's just my opinion. Magic was useful in this game and also deadly for both sides. That's going to turn some people off. I know some of you might be watching this and you're used to like AOS, or you're used to 8th edition. Very powerful magic, very little risk. You just saw what happened in this game, and that's going to be a big turnoff. And fair enough. Fair enough. For me, I like that. I like what I saw, because I shouldn't always be chucking dice at Magic. Magic should be a tool used in the right moment. To others, they're going to say, I paid 100 points for a wizard. I better be able to use it every turn. And I think both sides have a great argument. I would expect the old world to be low risk, high reward, like most Games Workshop. So to me, that's almost a given. But anyhow, great shooting out of the gate. Empire really made a dent in the Empire, or excuse me, yeah, the Empire made a big dent in the Chaos Army right out of the gate. They removed that whole left wing. That removing the ogre hammer to the left, I think, was a key moment in the game. Chaos made a game of it, caused the spear unit to flee in panic. And again, I talked about how in 8th edition that would not have been a thing, because leadership and morale has been slowly eroded out of Warhammer and Games Workshop games, because a lot of people don't like when their units run away. In fact, that was the big complaint against War Master, because War Master is an army game where it's all about giving orders and controlling morale and your troops executing those orders. So when they don't execute those orders, it frustrates certain people. But to me, that was a beautiful thing, because Chaos was getting kicked in the teeth, and then a lucky roll for them and an unlucky roll for Empire really turned that game. That spear unit turned around and ran. They didn't like what they were watching, and that made a game out of it. And had that been 8th edition, that wouldn't have happened, and that would have been a foregone conclusion. You would have had a whole big unit of spears. So I like that. You may not like that, and I get both sides of the argument. But really, that comes down to never give up. You never know how things are going to end up. And I will wrap this up with a little story about that. Never give up. So early on in my tournament career, I was playing Chaos, and I had my Bretonnian opponent dead to rights. And what happened was I ended up getting a rear charge on his Grail Knights with my Chaos Lord. And had I won that game, because I had won my games by a lot of points, I had a shot. And this happened twice in my grand tournament career. I had a shot to win the whole thing. And what happened was I did this when I did the last video on Chaos Lords in 5th edition. Like he has 10 attacks and he needs 3s to hit. And then the dragon has a bunch of attacks needing 3s to hit. And I rolled 16 dice or whatever it was and missed every single one. I rolled all 1s and 2s. And this was before phones, so no one could take a picture of that. But I remember the look on his face because he was packing up and shaking my hand. He thought it was done. You never know what's going to happen. And because of that bad roll, it ended up being a draw. So it was a great game. And obviously, I still remember that 20 years later. It was a great game. And you never know what's going to happen. So stick to your games. Don't just like throw in the towel after turn 2 because you're getting beat right away. Because things can turn around. All right. I hope you enjoyed this battle report. There's going to be more. I'm going to be digging out War Master soon to show how War Master played. I'm going to be doing a lot more of this Chaos versus Empire storyline. We're going to be exploring a lot more in the future. So let me know in the comment section what kind of battle reports you enjoy, what you're looking for. And I always like to hear your thoughts on what you saw and talking about the game in general. I'm also going to leave a link in this video to my Discord channel if you want to participate in conversation there. I enjoy talking about wargaming, so just bring a constructive attitude, and I look forward to hearing from you. But until then, I will talk to you guys later. Thanks for tuning in. If you liked it, give me a like, give me a subscribe, and I will see you soon.